Either women are dumber and not as hardworking and not as responsible than men, or something's off.
I wanted to start just by confessing that I'm a little bit nervous to talk to you. Is that like weird or what? But like it's true because, DEI has been so stigmatized that I'm a little anxious discussing it.
I'm happy to be here with you because I understand this emotion that you have. Sadly, this is an emotion that lots of people have because those who have thrown this campaign against DEI have been really good at a disinformation campaign. Lots of folks are worried about even uttering the letters, right? But it's been stigmatized, like you said. So yeah, I understand.
Without further ado, then, let me start the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and I'm a former chief culture officer and head of people. I've seen and heard it all, so truly no judgments. So let's get real and explore the cringy, confusing, and chaotic side of office life. Today, we're discussing bias in the office, recommending friends for jobs, and when taking career risks may be too risky. I'm joined today by Vernā Myers. Vernā is a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, author, and thought leader. She has a known approach to addressing bias and building inclusion. As a former deputy chief of staff for the Massachusetts Attorney General and Netflix's first VP of Inclusion Strategy, she's advised hundreds of organizations. Vernā hosts a podcast, a LinkedIn series, a successful micro course on bias, and her TED Talk has over 5 million views. Vernā, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Maya. Pleased to be here with you and your audience.
One of your claims to fame is that metaphor about diversity and inclusion, like diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. A lot of people don't know that that came from you, but it's a really powerful way to explain a concept that people sometimes find confusing. Why do you think that line was so iconic?
We were as surprised to realize that it resonated so powerfully with so many people across the world. Like I have seen, by the way, it is trademarked. So this has been like a movement. So I think that's one of the things that people don't understand who are new to this concept or who unfortunately have been fooled by this disinformation campaign is that they think this is like something that happened recently or like something that happened in the 10 years ago. But we've been on this journey of trying to figure out how to create workplaces where people can feel valued and that they have opportunity. And so when I came into the work, it was very much about representation, but we called it diversity. Actually, truthfully, we called it non-discrimination. Like a lot of people say to me, well, do you think we could just rebrand it? I'm like, we already rebranded like 400 times. Mm-hmm. DEI is a rebrand, all in order to make people feel more comfortable and to see that they have an investment in everybody doing well, right? It's great to get into the party, but a whole bunch of people are just along the wall, hoping against hope that they're going to be invited in to show their best dance. And unfortunately, a lot of that has to do with the owners. A lot of that has to do with the group that's already in the majority, already nicely like a fish in water with the culture. And so we really need people who will create a culture that folks can come up off of the wall, do their best thing, or we need to be the ones who invite people into not just the organization, but the sexy part of the organization, the fun part.
Yeah, I like that. And, inclusion to me really does have to do with invitation. At a fault, sometimes I would over-include people into certain meetings, into certain, functions that we did office-wide because I just want everyone to know that they were invited, even if they chose not to come. And I know that that's not exactly what you're saying, but it's sort of a idea that I think is part of the culture, that I was trying to build when I was in corporate culture, which is just everybody can come. You can decide not to, obviously, if it's not right for you, but I wanted people to know that there were spaces where everyone was invited. So you also, worked at a really interesting company, so I must ask you, how was working at Netflix? It's known for a lot of work culture trends.
Well, by the time I got to Netflix, right, I'd had my own business for 20 plus years, and Netflix was a client. And so, I was working with them as an external consultant. So I honestly reluctantly said okay because I loved my own practice and I loved being in lots of different companies. But I also loved what I saw at Netflix. It was one of those things where every phone call, when you would get off, you'd be like, damn, she's brilliant, Oh, or like
Wow, that's so
you
interesting.
go to the VP meeting, mine, there were so many women. I was like, I've never seen this before. I've never seen a 50-50 split in the highest positions in a company.
Where did you feel like, you had to work a little harder, I guess?
Well, the big work was cultural, and the big work was multicultural, geographic, language, you name it, right? Because one of the
Mhm.
reasons that Netflix wanted to focus on inclusion was that they were going all over the world. And they were very clear that they were an American based started company, and that in order to really get the best and hire the best and do the best content, they had to be open and aware and respectful of cultural differences. There are things that we like on film. We like the way it looks, the way it sounds, or whatever, and we
Mhm.
assume that it's universal. We assume that beauty is universal. It's not. So you go to certain
Mm.
countries and it doesn't look good to them. So you have to have enough awareness and respect and then skill to take advantage of the difference. And that is by far the hardest part, I think, with human beings, in at least in the Western culture, is they see difference as a problem. They don't quite understand that difference is like the essence and the place, the origination of innovation.
And interestingly enough, I mean, it's kind of a bias that people have. They don't realize, but the storytelling that you've been told as you've, been growing in a certain culture, or the way you've seen stories sort of laid out, is a kind of bias. And then when you're exposed to something new or a different point of view, isn't that interesting that if it can hold your attention, I think you can be really, enriched by that, of course. So recently, SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, dropped the E from DEI. So they opted for DNI. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know the situation, but I was not thrilled by that when I found that out. I was just like, what? I mean, equity is the like next stage after diversity and inclusion, because what you have to do in order to include people is that you have to make the situation equitable, which means that you need to level the playing field, which means you need to acknowledge that it's not level yet, right? And so if you're dropping equity, what you're doing is dropping the hardest work, because it's difficult for people to acknowledge that maybe it hasn't served certain groups as well. And that in order to actually address it, you would need to change a policy, a practice, a system, an application.
I guess the counter argument that I've heard is that they want things more, merit based. Let's say people are, with the mindset of excellence, then how come we need to level a playing field for them?
Yeah, I think if you really are into merit, you have to change the way things have been done in the past. There's no, like, look, think about it. If we were really based on merit, well, we have this amount of inequity, an equitable amount of women as CEOs. Is it possible that men are so much more excellent than women, that they continue to constitute, like in most cases, 80 some percent of the leadership in the company? Like it, either women are dumber and not as hardworking and not as responsible than men, or something's off.
Right.
So if you truly believe in merit, there's only one way to get to merit, and that is to have fair system, create a standard for everyone.
Before we continue, I want to take a break for just a second to ask listeners to follow up and subscribe to this podcast. It really helps the show grow and helps us bring you more weird work conversations. What was your weirdest workplace moment, if you could share? It could be an embarrassing moment or an aha moment. Where are the big lessons that you may have learned along the way?
I mean, I was personally embarrassed. I don't think anybody noticed it except for my boss. I was working for one of my bosses, and he was very, very supportive. And I went and I did a presentation, and afterwards I asked him for feedback. How did I do? And he said, you did great. You always do great. He said, but you really got to stop apologizing about everything. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, you apologize for everything. And I was like, I do not. And he was like, before you started, you apologized about the temperature in the room. You apologized about the lighting. You apologized about the tech, none of which you are responsible for or can control. And he said, it takes away from your power. And so I was defensive initially. And I was like, well, said like a true man, you're a white man, so you never say you made a mistake. And then I said, as a Black woman who's been taught a certain way of being, which is that I don't brag and I don't go on and on about myself and I don't puff myself up. So in some ways, when I'm doing that at the beginning, I'm just sort of saying to people, hey, I'm normal. Sorry about the lot. I'm just kind of easing in. And he was like, I don't buy that. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, that does not serve you well. Just get on with it. You're powerful. You have something powerful to deliver. Don't take yourself down. And Maya, I was like, wow, I've got to, he said, that's a false kind of humility that you are presenting. And so now we get up and I still want to apologize. I just don't do it.
Diminishing language is something that, women do fall prey to and could be the way we've been socialized. But I would start every email with, I'm so sorry for the late reply. I'm so sorry for whatever. Apologies that this happened. It's like, before I even got to the point of, like you're saying, of the email, I was already like, making people, I guess, maybe even feel uncomfortable. I not intentionally. In fact, the opposite. I was trying to make them feel more comfortable, but in doing that, I kind of tripped over my own toes a lot. Actually, it's interesting. There's this Chrome extension that my sister-in-law told me about, where it kind of corrects your email, and through the email, I saw that I'm constantly putting in these
Wow.
diminishing words, and I started eliminating it slowly, and then from my speech as well. I'm again, everything's a work in progress, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it takes time. Now, before we get to our listener questions, let's stay up to date with the week in work. This is our take on recent trends in the workplace that are changing how we work or how we think about work life. So, the DEI push and its pushback has been giving job candidates and HR experts a little bit of whiplash. A growing number of major US companies, everything from Google to Disney to Target and Ford, are all scaling back or rebranding their DEI programs. Reddit had a recent post from a DEI expert navigating these changing times, and I wanted your take on this dilemma, Vernā. So this woman writes, with so much backlash against DEI, I'm thinking of pivoting to another area of HR. Trouble is, I've exclusively worked in DEI for over 10 years. All my titles at every company I've been at have diversity, equity in the title. Any advice on how to pivot? I'm just worried about the sustainability of the field. So,
Yeah.
Vernā, you must know other people in this situation. What would you recommend that they do?
I must know other people. I must know myself. you know,
Sorry.
when I left Netflix, I went back to my consulting company and assumed things would be the same. And then I blindsided by all this. But so, of course, this has caused me to ask myself those questions as well. Most companies, the reason why they just didn't flat out get rid of TI, because they're like, wait a minute, this is how we get the best talent. This is how we create like innovation. This is how we know what lens to look through on behalf of our customer base. This is like, so we can't quite give this up. I feel like this could be a time to look at what you do in this role. And I call them the 4 R's, which is to like reassess, right? What's been working? What hasn't worked? what's created division, what's created harmony. Two is to redefine. Once you do that assessment, how do you want to define the work? And then the third thing is really like reimagine. So, what things do you want to do differently that's exciting and interesting and that can really bring people along? And then the last piece is re-engage, because we know that some of the ways that the work has been practiced and some of the fear that has been generated means that we need to then invite people back into this conversation and give them a safe place to do it.
Now it's time to go on a quick break. When we come back, is it bias or is it perception? We have a question from a listener who isn't sure if their colleagues are treating them differently based on some recent changes in their appearance. We'll dive into it in just a minute. Hey, quick break from AI. If you're enjoying Workplace Weirdness and you're thinking, wow, it's comforting to know other people's jobs are just as messy as mine, do us a favor. Follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with the one coworker who would absolutely get it. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and we've got more cringy emails, baffling bosses, and anonymous confessions coming your way. This is your safe space to laugh about the weird stuff work throws at you. Stay weird. Now, back to the episode. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. Before we get to our listener questions, I want to mention that if you have a workplace question, go to our website at workplace-weirdness.com and click on Share Your Story. We'd love to hear from you. I'm here with bias and inclusion expert, Vernā Myers. Vernā, we have a listener who has noticed some changes in how they're being treated at work. Let's check it out. Maya, I'm not sure if I'm overthinking things or if there's actually something going on. Over the past 2 years, I've gained about 100 pounds, and I can't help but wonder if that's affecting how colleagues interact with me. I notice that sometimes my ideas are dismissed in meetings. I get less eye contact from certain colleagues, or I'm not included in informal conversations and decision making. At the same time, other people seem to get more opportunities or recognition for similar work. I can't tell if this is just normal office dynamics, subtle bias, or I'm just imagining it. I don't want to be paranoid. How do you navigate situations where you suspect bias against you, including from your manager, potentially related to physical appearance, without making it worse or harming professional relationships? So, this is a great question. Vernā, what would your advice to this listener be?
So, first, I would say, what has happened to cause the 100 pounds? Like, I don't know, but that could also be contributing to how that person shows up. Often we have biases against ourselves, and it comes out in a very strange way. Always in any situation, it's the self check. The second thing I would do is, if you have a friend or a colleague that you trust, you can share your observations and say, are you noticing that? Am I making that up? The third thing might be, if you could go to your manager to say, I'm really excited about da 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 da. I really want to give my very best in this situation. And depending on how your manager responds, you might then be able to have a conversation. This person could also have it absolutely right. And if in that case, you need to go to a mentor, you need to go to a person who's more senior, you need to go to HR and say, look, I don't know how to deal with this. Can you help me?
You know, I've been overweight most of my life, to be honest. I've had my times when I've lost it and then seen the perceptions of people change around me. Let's put it that way. But knowing that I was overweight and sort of having dealt with it my whole life, I dressed to impress. In other words, I tried to make up with, for it, I guess, in other ways. There is something about being underestimated. So if you could use that to your advantage. I mean, we as women do that all the time, right? We're like, we look so cute and all that. You wouldn't think, but but we're really capable of great things. And so, it's okay to sometimes be underestimated and then over excel and do things that will really wow people and will make them put that weight category to the side because your
Mhm.
work is just exceptional. Your suggestion, I think, is the best though. If you really feel like it's true bias, talking to somebody, talking to your manager, or if that's not the right person, somebody in HR, it's not easy, but be brave and say something. Our next question is from a listener who wants to follow their passions but feels unsupported in that dream. Hi, I'm seriously thinking about leaving my current job to pursue something completely different, something I'm passionate about but don't have much experience in. The problem is, I have a wife and kids who depend on me financially, and my current job is stable and pays well. I keep worrying that if I quit and the new path doesn't work out, we won't be able to cover our mortgage, bills, and other responsibilities. I really want to just go for it, but my wife is not supportive. Even though she doesn't make her fair share, should she get to weigh in on this decision? Okay, well, I have some thoughts on that, but first, let me get your take, Renee.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things sticking out for me. One is fair share. I hear this person saying that they feel like this their partner is not bringing what they should.
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel a judgment in there. The second thing that I heard is like, I'm worried. If you're worried, they're worried. Even though it's your passion, it's a family decision. What that looks like is by the time you're like, I heard this person say, I'm just ready to go for it. How did you get there? Because I'm sure you just didn't wake up one day and say, okay, you know what? I'm ready to roll the dice on this. Oh, I remember my husband, ex-husband now, was going to business school, and oh my God, he had gone to medical school. So I had lived through the medical school
Wow.
experience. He was a doctor. He had started his own practice, and then that wasn't working. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go to business school, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, because all I could think about was I'm going to have to do like I'm going to have to do the kid, and I'm going to have to do
Mhm.
it. I was working, and I was just like, no, you can't do it. I don't want you to do it. And he's like, but it's for the family. No. I'm like, no, it's for your ego. You just want whatever.
Mhm.
And so we were not on the same page for a little bit. And then we just had to keep talking. We actually may have talked to a therapist. I don't
Mhm.
remember, but that I highly recommend a third party. You got to give your partner an opportunity to work through it. And maybe what you do is have some kind of agreement. Like, I'm going to try this for a certain amount of time. And then if this doesn't work, then da 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 da. Or I'm going to put away this much money, and once we have this much money put away, then maybe I can do this. You have to help your partner understand how important this is for you, not just assume they would like understand that.
No, so I mean, my reaction was very similar to yours. My first thought was, it's a marriage. It's not about how much money you put in. It's about being responsible so that her feelings matter. The fact that she doesn't put in her fair share is not an issue, and whatever
Yes.
fair share means, because there's so much invisible and emotional labor that goes into these things that you can't really quantify that. It doesn't work exactly like that. Maybe there's a way to include a little bit of your passion as a side gig. I mean, people do that. It's harder work on your end, but at least then you can kind of maybe do a proof of concept. It's not a straight line. There's so many different combinations. So it's about talking and understanding how the partnership works in order to make each person's dreams and just their life better. Listener, I hope you can work with your wife to come to a better compromise, and that that you understand that it's a shared experience doing that. And now, every week we cover one question addressing the kind of cringeworthy work event that'll make you realize why the referral bonus is not always worth it. This week's cringeworthy question comes from an employee who's mixed friendship with career, and it got weird. So, well, weird's our specialty, so let's take a look. Dear Workplace Weirdness, hi. I'm in a tricky situation and I'm not sure how to handle it. A friend asked me to help him get a job at my company, so I gave him advice, put in a good word, and tried to support him through the process. Unfortunately, he didn't get the job, and during the interview process, he showed up late and said some things that made the interviewer uncomfortable. Now my manager seems disappointed in me, and my friend is a little upset, saying that he put so much effort into preparing and only applied because I said I would help him. Now I don't know what to do. Will things just go back to normal, or will I have to fix the situation? Oh boy, this kind of thing happens a lot when people early on in their careers. I think. Vernay, what's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry this person went out on a limb for their friend and it ended up this way. I'd like to know more about why his boss would be holding this against him. There feels like there might be something underneath of that. Like,
Right.
was there a prior experience? is this person deciding that his judgment isn't good because he suggested this person? I might try to figure out how to have that conversation
Yeah.
with my boss. The friend, come on. I mean, and some things may be confidential, so you may not be able to share it with this person, but I think you might want to give them some feedback.
Right. Like have a little bit
Just
of tough love or something. Talk and
yeah,
say, listen, when you interview at any job, please
right.
don't, I don't know, whatever, sit on the table or something. I don't know.
I know. Like, were you nervous? Like, tell me about. Okay, so you could do the friend version. This would be very generous as a friend,
Mhm.
to say, okay, sorry that didn't work out. Do you want to talk about, how the interview went for you, and whether, where you were a little worried, etc., because maybe I can help you think about this going forward for the next interview, right? That is the hardest thing about friends, because friends not from work,
Right.
friends from life. And sometimes the work and life friend are two different folks. You did what? You said
Exactly.
that might be a cautionary tale for anybody who's listening.
That's what
If
I was thinking
you
too,
are
that think a second, take a pause. But you should know that if you're recommending someone, that means that's somebody that you want to be bringing into the culture. It means somebody who's going to be a value add to the company. Mixing friendship in the workplace can be fabulous, but it can also be fraught. So in the
yes,
future, be careful. And that's our show for today, Vernā. Isn't that nice? Um,
I really enjoyed talking with you, Maya. These are like real issues, and
yeah.
so I'm glad we had a chance to talk through them.
Same. I want to thank you for coming here. I definitely get why your TED Talk has inspired so many people. By the way, really enjoyed watching it. Any last thoughts before we go? Where can we find your books or your podcast?
At VernāMyers.com is sort of what my Insta is. Please follow me. Our podcast is Sundays with Vernā. But if you go to our website, all of that is easy to find. Subscribe to our newsletter because we're always doing new things. The main thing is that I believe deeply in this moment in time, while it does feel like the instinct is to separate yourselves from others, that what we really need to do is go in the other direction and seek out connection and interact with people with a great deal of compassion. And as you mentioned, stay curious. That
Mm,
is how human beings grow.
I love it. All right, wonderful. Thank you for, allowing me to have a moment of reflection, connection, all of that. I think that this was a really wonderful conversation for me as well. So I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
If you've got some weirdness in the workplace, please go to our website at workplace-weirdness.com and click on Share Your Story. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. This is Maya Kadar Kovalsky reminding you to embrace the quirks and make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show is produced by me, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell Lowe. Ohad Salmon is our strategist, and Barry Rowan is our digital media specialist. Thank you to our production partners at Podify. A special thanks to Vernā Myers for joining us on today's episode. Also, thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next time for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.